The statement "God is nothing more but a delusion of narcissistic prehistoric man's egos and thoughts" reflects a viewpoint that God, or the concept of God, is not real or divine but rather a human invention. Breaking it down. In summary, the comment suggests that the concept of God is a human construct rooted in ancient self-centered thinking rather than a divine truth. It reflects a skeptical or atheistic perspective on religion and spirituality. Deeper analysis. The statement reflects a materialistic and atheistic worldview, where belief in God is considered a human fabrication rather than a spiritual truth. This perspective often stems from a belief that all religious concepts were created as coping mechanisms or explanations for natural phenomena before scientific understanding existed. Calling God a delusion is a direct reference to the idea that belief in God is irrational or unfounded. This term was popularized by thinkers like Richard Dawkins in his book, The God Delusion, where he argues that faith is irrational. The phrase, narcissistic prehistoric man's egos, implies that the origin of God concepts was rooted in human self-importance. This aligns with a view that ancient humans crafted gods in their own image to justify their authority or control over others. Some atheists believe that gods were invented to explain natural phenomena, for example storms, earthquakes, before science could offer explanations. Others believe that religious leaders throughout history used the concept of a deity to manipulate and control populations. Faith-based response. Begin by acknowledging that people hold diverse perspectives on faith and spirituality. A thoughtful response respects the other person's right to their beliefs, while gently sharing your own perspective. One could argue that the concept of God transcends mere human invention, because the complexity and order of the universe point to a divine creator. The Bible teaches that God has revealed himself through creation, Romans 1:20, and through his word. It's notable that throughout history, almost every civilization has developed some belief in a higher power. This persistent and widespread sense of the divine suggests that belief in God may be more than just a product of human imagination. It may be an inherent aspect of human nature. Ecclesiastes 3:11 states that God has set eternity in the human heart. Many believers testify to a personal relationship with God that transforms their lives in ways that psychological or social constructs cannot explain. Sharing a personal testimony can be more impactful than debating intellectual concepts. Example. Response. I understand that some people view belief in God as a human invention, and I respect that you have your perspective. Personally, I believe that God is real, not just as an ancient concept but as a living presence in my life today. I've seen how faith brings purpose, peace, and transformation that I can't attribute solely to human imagination. It's interesting to think about how almost every culture throughout history has recognized a higher power in some form. Maybe that's because the desire to seek something greater than ourselves is written on our hearts. I'd love to hear more about why you feel the way you do, and I'm open to sharing more about my own experiences if you're interested. Gap 3. S. Delusion, the origin of God. In the dawn of human consciousness, when fire first danced and the unknown loomed large, humanity looked to the skies, searching for answers, desperate for purpose. A verse. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Psalm 19:1. They looked to the heavens, terrified of the unknown, and out of fear and imagination, they crafted stories, stories of gods, of power, of protection. Verse. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man. Romans 1:22-23. In their fear, and in their triumph, they created something that would shape humanity forever. Verse. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Romans 1:20. Delusion, the origin of God. A film that challenges the deepest beliefs, tracing the origins of faith from ancient whispers to modern convictions. Verse. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. God is not a revelation but a reflection, a projection of our most primal desires, a construct, born from the human need for meaning, for control, for hope. Verse. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Psalm 14:1. From the ashes of ignorance to the cathedrals of power, one idea has endured through the ages, an idea that transcends cultures, continents, and time itself. Verse. Jesus Christ the same yesterday and today and forever. Hebrews 13:8. The belief in a higher power, it's hardwired into our psychology. The brain seeks patterns, meaning. and when it finds none, it invents them. Verse. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. But what if the greatest story ever told was nothing more than a dream of the human mind, a creation born from longing and the fear of mortality? Verse. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Mark 8:36. Is God real? Verse. But Jesus said, Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 19:14. From the dawn of time to the present day, a question that divides humanity and defines our very soul. Verse. For now we see through a glass darkly but then face to face. 1 Corinthians 13:12. Maybe belief itself is the miracle. Verse. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. A journey into the origins of faith, the psychology of belief, and the power of the human mind to shape reality. Verse. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Ephesians 2:8. What if everything you believed was just a reflection of you? Verse. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Proverbs 3:5-1, Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Context. This verse is from a psalm attributed to King David, expressing the grandeur and majesty of God's creation. The heavens and the sky are seen as testimonies of God's creative power. Analysis. This verse highlights the belief that the natural world itself is evidence of God's existence. While the trailer questions whether God is a human invention, this verse suggests that God's reality is evident through creation itself. It challenges the idea that God is merely a projection of human thought by emphasizing the observable universe as a manifestation of divine handiwork. 2. Romans 1:22-23. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man. Context. The Apostle Paul addresses the tendency of humans to exchange the truth of God for idolatry, crafting gods in their own image, rather than worshiping the true Creator. Analysis. This verse directly connects to the trailer's premise, questioning whether belief in God is a human invention. Paul warns that when humans rely on their own wisdom and ignore divine revelation, they fall into folly by creating distorted versions of God. The trailer's portrayal of ancient humans crafting deities reflects this biblical caution against idolatry and the danger of shaping God based on human imagination. 3. Romans 1:20. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Context. Paul argues that God's existence and attributes are evident in the natural world, leaving humanity without excuse for disbelief. Analysis. This verse challenges the concept that God is purely a human construct. It asserts that the divine nature is clearly revealed through creation itself. In contrast to the trailer's skeptical tone, this verse suggests that the complexity and order of the universe point to an intelligent designer rather than mere human imagination. 4. 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. Context. Paul encourages believers to live by faith in God's promises rather than relying solely on physical evidence. Analysis. This verse underscores the central theme of belief versus skepticism. While the trailer questions the validity of belief in God, this verse teaches that faith often transcends what is visible or scientifically provable. It highlights the tension between empirical evidence and spiritual conviction, which the trailer seeks to explore. 5. Psalm 14:1. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Context. David contrasts the wisdom of acknowledging God with the foolishness of denying his existence. Analysis. This verse is a strong biblical rebuttal to the notion that God is merely a human invention. It points out that skepticism or outright denial of God is seen as folly from a biblical perspective. In the context of the trailer, this verse serves as a counter-argument, suggesting that dismissing God as a delusion is a flawed conclusion. 6. Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ the same yesterday, and today, and forever. Context. This verse emphasizes the unchanging nature of Christ, reassuring believers of his eternal presence and reliability. Analysis. While the trailer presents God as a concept evolving with human culture, this verse asserts that Jesus Christ remains constant and unwavering. It challenges the idea that belief in God is a fluid human construct by presenting the biblical view of divine permanence and consistency. 2 Timothy 1:7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Context. Paul encourages Timothy not to be fearful but to embrace the strength, love, and rationality that come from God. Analysis. This verse contrasts the trailer's suggestion that fear drove humans to invent God. Instead, it asserts that true faith produces strength and clarity of thought. It challenges the narrative that belief in God is rooted in primitive fear or ignorance. 8. Mark 8:36. For what shall it profit a man, if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Context. Jesus emphasizes the eternal value of the soul over worldly achievements. Analysis. This verse addresses the existential void that skepticism may fail to fill. Even if humanity intellectually dismisses God, the soul's need for divine connection remains. It counters the idea that rejecting God in pursuit of worldly understanding is a wise trade. 9. Matthew 19:14. But Jesus said, Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Context. Jesus highlights the purity and faith of children as an example of how believers should approach God. Analysis. This verse subtly challenges the skeptical premise by presenting faith as something natural and pure, especially among children. It implies that the simple, trusting belief in God is not merely an adult invention, but an innate human disposition. 10. 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see through a glass darkly but then face to face. Context. Paul reflects on the partial understanding of spiritual truths in this life compared to the full revelation that will come. Analysis. This verse resonates with the trailer's exploration of the human quest for understanding. It acknowledges that our perception of God may be imperfect now but hints at a future clarity, suggesting that belief in God is not entirely a product of human confusion or projection. 11. Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Context. The author defines faith as trust in the unseen realities of God's promises. Analysis. This verse directly opposes the idea that belief in God lacks evidence. It frames faith not as a lack of rationality but as a confident expectation based on spiritual truths. It challenges the trailer's portrayal of faith as purely an emotional or irrational response. 12. Ephesians 2:8. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Context. Paul emphasizes that salvation is a gift from God, received through faith and not through human effort. Analysis. The verse asserts that faith itself is divinely imparted, not self-generated. This challenges the notion that humans invented belief in God from a psychological need, instead suggesting that faith is a spiritual gift. 13. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Context. Solomon advises total reliance on God rather than personal reasoning. Analysis. The verse cautions against relying solely on human intellect, aligning with the idea that spiritual truths often transcend human logic. It challenges the rationalistic dismissal of faith as mere illusion. 14. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Context. This verse emphasizes the value of mutual dialogue and growth through challenging conversations. Analysis. It aligns with the trailers by encouraging open discussion and the sharpening of ideas through conversation. It promotes respectful debate rather than mere dismissal of differing beliefs. If you find this thought-provoking, comment below and let's keep the conversation going.